Hey there, Playbook Academy. It's Todd. I am so excited that we are finally getting this maiden voyage launched. I've been talking for weeks now about a private coaching group on Facebook. And those of you that are in this group right now, you are the chosen few. You're the founding members. You are the charter members of the very first Church Playbook Academy. And so I'm going to give some instructions on what I'm going to do today and how you can participate. Then I'm actually going to record the content for this first lesson. At the end of the lesson, I'm going to then ask you for questions. Now, you can type your questions out at any time, but just know that I'm going to answer them at the end. I also want to let you know that I just posted in the Facebook group a link called Tools and Resources. Now, every single week, I'm going to put new tools and new resources in that folder. All of those are yours forever. Now, they are in a folder on my personal Dropbox, but they're also going to be uploaded to the Members Resource Center when you initially join the Academy. So even after this coaching group is done, you will still have access to all of the videos, all of the audio, and all of the tools and resources. I just want to say a quick hello to Tina, but I don't think that's Tina. I think that's Tina's husband. So is it Tom? I don't remember off the top of my head. Paul, thanks for saying hi. So like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and record this content. You can put your questions in, and even after the video is done, Thomas, thank you very much. Even after the video is done, you can come back, you can ask questions anytime, and I will shoot you a reply. So, with that in mind, welcome to week 1 of the Church Playbook Academy. And each week, we're going to take a deeper look at the 6 fundamentals that helped my church go from 0 to 200 in a year. And I believe that can happen in your church as well. It does not matter denomination. It does not matter your current church size. It does not matter your worship style. I firmly am convinced anywhere in the country, there are 200 people in your town that would love to go to your church if they just knew you existed. And so the reason that I wrote the Church Playbook was because I was coaching a couple dozen pastors in my own denomination. And I just was getting more and more requests. And so I decided to write down my church's story about what happened to us in hopes that it would help other pastors and be an encouragement. Of course, after I wrote the Church Playbook and I gave away the first, 250 copies, and then I put it online, and we've sold now more than 2,000 copies in 3 months. And so several people of you asked if we could have a private coaching group and me actually record the content that I wrote in the book, the updated version of that content. And so that's what you are watching now. So a quick story about my church. My church currently at the time of this recording is 7 years old. I've been a pastor for more than 20 years. But when we started our church, I started with 2 families. And our initial Bible study, we had over 100 people show up to the Bible study, which I was the most surprised of them all. I had tried to start a church before when I was much, much younger, and that was not my experience to have over 100 people in the room. that continued to grow. And so we launched officially on Easter 2011. And we launched, there was, 150 or so people that were going to our church. Within the year, we had gotten up to about 175. We had hit 200 a couple of times. But then a very influential family in our church, who happened to also be my best friend and his family, decided to leave, and they left very publicly. And nothing was the matter. Like, there was no moral failing. Nothing ethical went wrong. It's just that church planting is very hard, and you don't know how hard it's going to be until you do it. And it had taken a toll on their family, and so they left. What happened as a result of that is other people thought they could leave too. And so we had been averaging 175, and within about 3 weeks or so, we had lost 50. We were right around 100 people. And of course, some people watching this video might think to themselves, man, I would love to be able to lose 100 people and still have people in the room. But I promise you, if you show up on a Sunday and a couple of families are missing, everybody in the room feels it. Well, when 100 people are missing, everybody feels it. And so, of course, I went into a deep depression. I actually spent thousands and thousands of dollars on different coaching groups, mentoring groups, one-on-one coaching, different online courses to help me right the ship, to help things start growing again. The problem was nobody ever told me what to do first, and then what to do next, and then what to do after that. And that's what the church playbook is all about, is I give you these 6 fundamentals in the right order to not only help you have big events at your church, but then also keep the people that come to your church. Because some people, like I did, thought, well, if I can just do these events, if I can just get people in the room, they'll stay, and that's not the case. So I wrote the church playbook for pastors just like me, just like you, that were struggling with getting people to stay. My best friend and his family left in the spring of 2012. Our church attendance tanked by 75, 100 people. And that summer, I tried everything I possibly could to grow our church. I was in all of these groups. I took all of these courses, and nothing seemed to work. Well, I'm also a football coach. August 1st is when football season starts. I've been coaching for a dozen years, 13 years actually, and this is my 10th season with the Santee Ravens, the one and only Pop Warner league in my town. And I needed a break. I needed a break from trying to grow the church. I needed a break from trying to get people to come back, to get people to stay. I needed a distraction. And so I started coaching the next season. We had a winning season. We went to the playoffs, had a great season. In fact, my son and a lot of his friends were on that team. They were in the 8th grade. This was their last season together. They had been playing together for a few years, and we had been building for this season. And so we had a great season. We went to the playoffs. Our season was over. I took a couple of weeks to sort of regroup, because coaching a football team is another full-time job. And then showed up on Sunday and started preaching, and realized for the first time that the room was full again. And in fact, we had recouped all of the people that we had lost. And I didn't know why. And so I went away for a few days in reflection and in prayer. And I said, God, help me understand why our church is growing again. And I remembered a quote from Andy Stanley that said, if you don't know why something is working right, you won't be able to fix it when it breaks. And I realized that sort of accidentally, I had started leading my church with the same philosophy and methodology that I had been coaching my football team. And now, again, remember, coaching football is like another full-time job. And so what did I do with the church? Remember, I said I needed a break. So I had made the decision right up front that I'm only going to do the things I absolutely have to do. What are the things in the church that need to be done that can only be done by me? And then whatever else is on my plate, someone else is going to have to do, or it's just not going to get done. So it started with that. It just started with that shift in philosophy, that shift in mindset, that there are things in the church that need to be done that only I can do. And everything else that I was currently doing was either going to need to be done by someone else, or it just wasn't going to get done. I was in such desperation that I had reasoned that if something needed to be done and I wasn't going to do it, someone else would eventually notice and pick that ball up and run with it. And guess what? I was right. So the first thing that I had to figure out, what are the things that need to be done in the church that only I can do? Well, I'm going to give you 3 things. They were true for me, and I promise they are true for you. The first thing that needs to be done in the church that only you can do is you have to be the primary vision caster for your church. You're the one that reminds the church of why they exist, what they're there for, what it is that you're trying to do. Now, I used to make the mistake of dropping the vision on my congregation once, maybe twice a year. But you can't drop the vision and expect them to carry it for 12 months. Life gets in the way. Vision leaks. They need a fresh filling of vision on a regular basis. So instead of dropping the vision on your church, you need to drip the vision in every single sermon. I don't care what you're preaching about. At the end of every single sermon, before you give the invitation, you need to find a way to connect the sermon to one part of why your church exists. And say, hey, church, this is what we're here for. And could you imagine if everyone got on board with this? Could you imagine the kind of impact that would have in our homes and our community? You've got to keep the vision in front of the people on a weekly basis. It doesn't need to be more than a minute or 2 in your sermon, but you've got to drip the vision, not just drop the vision. Now listen, you still need to drop the vision once or twice a year. You need a sermon that's just vision, but you need to drip the vision every single week. That's how you keep it in front of the church. So you've got to be the primary vision caster. Number 2, you've got to be the primary teacher of your church. Now, later on in the academy, I'm going to show you that there is no way that you should be preaching 50 Sundays a year. You just aren't that creative. You're just not that theologically smart. You just don't have that much to say. You've got to mix it up. You've got to help your people learn how to hear God's voice through different voice boxes. But you've got to be the primary guy. You've got to be the primary person that is carrying God's word to your congregation throughout the year. And then number 3, not only are you the primary vision caster and the primary teacher, but you're the primary leadership developer as well, which means you have to be super picky about who you meet with during the week, especially if you're bivocational. If you are bivocational, you more than anybody else has to be especially picky about who gets your time. You cannot do every counseling session. You can't. You can't do every marriage. You can't do every funeral. You have got to be picky about who you meet with. So you've got to identify, and this is what we're going to talk about today. You've got to identify and intentionally spend time with the people that you can develop to be leaders in your church. So this first fundamental that I just want to spend a few minutes talking about today is who is on your team. Because as a football coach, I currently have, now I'm not the head coach this season, I'm mentoring a first-year head coach. We have 21 players on our roster. And they all come with a different skill set. They all come with a different athletic ability. But I've got 21 kids that it's my job to coach them up to play the game of football. And I need to know their strengths. I need to know their weaknesses. I need to know who the fast ones are. I need to know who the quick ones are. I need to know who the strong ones are. And I need to know who the smart ones are. And so you as the pastor have to figure out, okay, I'm coaching this church. I'm leading this church. I'm pastoring this church. Okay, who's on my team? Doesn't matter if you have 5 people on your team, 50 people on your team. You have to know who's on your team. Now, let me give you 5 different kinds of people that are on your team, because your team is bigger than just the people that take the field. My team is way more than the kids that get in a uniform and play the game on Saturdays. So, in a church context, what are the 5 different kinds of people that make up our team? Well, if you've read the church playbook, you would know that number 1, there are the owners. Now, the owners are the people in your church that define the win. And in a win is so much more than what's left on the scoreboard at the end of the game. If you are, say, the New England Patriots, Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick get together before the season starts, and they define the win as another trip to the Super Bowl and win that game. They're always heavily favored to go to the big game at the end of the year. If you are the Cleveland Browns, you're not trying to get to the Super Bowl. Your win is something very different. Your win is probably to win more games than you lose this season, or to win half of your games, or to finally stop the run, or be able to complete a pass downfield. The owners on the team are the ones that define what the win is. And so in a church, the owners, those are the elders or the board of directors. If you're in a staff-led church like I am, it's the pastoral team that makes up the leadership team in the church. Those are the owners. You and you as the pastor are probably on that team. Whether or not you are the chairperson for that team is another story, but the owners are the group that defines the win. Now, the next group of people on your team are the coaches. And the senior pastor is usually both one of the owners and is also the head coach. But you've got other coaches on your team. These are your deacons. These are your ministry leaders. They could be paid. They could be volunteer. It doesn't matter. These are people that have influence within the church. These are people that have ministry responsibility. Now, I just want to make a quick point here that the head coach probably in his or her prime used to be the star player of a team before they became the senior pastor. So you were maybe a youth pastor, maybe you were an associate pastor at another church. Someone identified you as a person that would be the right person to lead a church, and you eventually became the senior pastor. Well, at your last church, you were probably the star player. You had the most talent. You had the most ability. You had the most willingness to do whatever it would take to win. The biggest shift that senior pastors have to make, whether they have 10 people in their church, 50 or 500, is you are no longer the star player on the team. You need to stop acting like it. You're the coach. That's your job. Your job is to be the primary vision caster. What's the vision? It's the win. It's the win that the owners have decided on. So you're the primary vision caster. You're the primary teacher. And now watch this. You're the primary leadership developer. You're developing the next star of the team. That's you. You're developing the next generation of talent. Now, let me give you case in point. Now, like I told you, this season, I'm not the head coach for my team. I'm mentoring the head coach. At the time of this recording, we are in the fall season. We are 3 weeks into the season. And yesterday, the head coach showed up to practice and said, I have an idea for a new tackling drill. And so he grabs a tackling dummy, one of those tall, heavy bags. And these bags are you've seen them before. I mean, players will practice blocking on them. They'll practice tackling on them. And he says, so instead of having the bag stationary, I'm going to grab the handle on the bag and I'm going to start dragging it. I'm going to run, and then the player has to chase the bag as the coach is changing direction and tackle the bag from behind. He's trying to recreate a game time situation. I get it. Well, I was coaching up another player when all of a sudden I hear this moaning. And then I hear, Todd. And it was another assistant coach. Todd, you need to call an ambulance. And I look, and my head coach is on the ground, snapped his ankle in 2 places because he was trying to do something that only a player can do. He's not a player anymore. And now, of course, he's learned his lesson. You, senior pastor, you're not the star player. Just because you still have some ability to play, just because you're still very talented, you've got to stop thinking of yourself as the star player for the team and start thinking of yourself as the leadership developer of a whole new crop of star players. So at this point, so we've got owners, we've got coaches. This point, we've got the player. Now, these are the people that the coach has identified as gifted and talented to play at a specific position. They're the ones that dress up in a uniform, they put on the pads, and they play the game on Saturday. These are your volunteers. Now, they're not necessarily ministry leaders. They're not necessarily deacons, but these are the people that show up and pour the coffee. These are the people that greet or hand out a bulletin as people walk in. These are the people that do the work of the ministry. Remember, Ephesians 4, that it is up to the apostles and the pastors and the shepherds to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry. Well, the players are the saints that do the work of the ministry. And then the next group of people that they're a part of your team, These are the spectators. And these people, boy, this is a great group of people, because this is one of your biggest, watch this now. The higher the responsibility, the smaller the attendance at that particular level. So there's only a couple of owners on the team because they have the most responsibility. There's a few more coaches. They don't have all the responsibility that the owners do, but they have a lot of responsibility. And then there are the players, and they have the responsibility of doing, not necessarily leading, but doing. And then you've got the spectators, and they don't do nothing, which is why they're your biggest group. The 80-20 rule exists. It is alive and well in the church today. 20% of the people do 80% of the work, and 80% of the people don't do a thing. And it's true when you've got a church of 10, and it's true when you've got a church of 1,000. 20% of the people do everything, 80% do nothing. So the spectators, the thing is this, like, they may not miss a Sunday. Now, you better not sit in their seat, right? I mean, people, they're creatures of habit, and they'll walk out the door and say, Pastor, that was the best sermon I've ever heard. or Pastor, that was the worst sermon I ever heard. But they are spectators. They sit and they watch, because that's what spectators do. They're fans. Look, I was born outside of Chicago. My dad was in the Navy. I've been all over the country. I've lived in the South. I've lived on the East Coast. I've lived on the West Coast. I'm currently in San Diego, thanks to the U.S. Navy. Now, so I'm a Bears fan because I was born outside of Chicago. I've got all the jerseys. I watched them the other night lose by 1 point to the Packers. Okay, so I'm a fan of the Bears, but I'm not actually, I don't suit up and play the game. I don't coach the players, and I'm not an owner. I'm a spectator. Does that make sense? So you've got owners, coaches, players, spectators. There's one more group. It's actually the biggest group, because these are the people that don't go to your church yet, but they live in your community. This is your city. It's the city that your church is in. And this is your calling, is to reach your city and get them to be spectators, and then call them out of the seats and onto the field to play the game. And then there's going to be a handful of them that you call up to the next level to be a coach. And they may even become an elder/owner. So that's what we're trying to do. Turn our city into spectators, into players, into coaches, into owners. That's what that's what I just said is the process of discipleship. Turning atheistic, unchurched people into fully sold out, devoted followers of Jesus Christ. Pastor, that's your calling. That's my calling. That's what we're here to do. So as a football coach, I got to figure out who's on my team. Once I do that, I've got to get the field ready. Now, remember, I coach Pop Warner. So we don't have a paid staff that goes and sets up the field before game time, that sets up the field for practice. I have to do all that. I'm responsible to make sure that happens. So when it comes to getting the field ready, there are 5 different approaches that you have to take, because you've got 5 different groups of people on your team. So when it comes to the owners, remember, the owners define the win. And so defining the win, once you define the win, you need to set some goals to achieve that win. And one of the mistakes that I made early on in my ministry career is I tried to plan too much and too far away. We would plan these 1-year goals, 3-year goals, and 5-year goals. You have no idea what your church is going to look like 5 years from now. You have no idea what your church is going to look like 1 year from now. So it's not that there isn't value in setting long-term goals. You can treat them more like, I hope my church accomplishes this 5 years from now. But you really can't make that a goal because you don't know what your church is going to look like. So there's one question that I have learned to ask over the last 6 years that has changed everything. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you the question that I ask, and I'm going to walk you through the process that I lead my team through to smash every goal that we set. And the question is this: not 1 year from now, not 3 years from now, not 5 years from now, in the next 90 days, what are the 3 things that we can do that would make our church better or bigger? That's it. You don't have the staff, you don't have the time, Pastor, you don't have the energy to do 10 things. In fact, if you are bivocational, I would even give yourself permission to not do 3 things. Maybe you need to do just 1 thing. Maybe you need to do 2 things. Maybe you can do 3. But even if you're full-time on staff at your church, I would not do more than 3 things because there's power in focus. So in the next 90 days, what are the 3 things that we could do that would make our church better or bigger? Now, I took my owners on an overnight trip, and I got a giant whiteboard, and we worked this out. Now, I have done this exercise so many times, I actually had professionally designed what I call the 1-year planner. And I'm not selling it to you, I'm giving it to you. If you look in the Members Resource Center, you will see there is a PDF of this file that you can print out 100 times and use for yourself. And so here is how you use it. You have everybody, whether it's on a whiteboard or on a blank sheet of paper, you have everybody write down every possible answer to the question, what can we do in the next 90 days to make our church better or bigger? And in fact, I had my leadership team, I think I gave them a half an hour, and they had to go to opposite ends of the camp center that we were at. And I said, hey, I just want you to get alone with the Lord, and I want you to ask him that question. I want you to ask yourself that question. I want you to write down every conceivable answer to that question. The question is brilliant. What can we do? What can we do in the next 90 days? Not what do I hope for? What do I wish? No, let's take we know who's on our team now. We've taken an honest assessment of everyone's skill sets, strengths, weaknesses. So the people around this table, the owners of the team, what can we do in the next 90 days that would make our church better or bigger? And you just have them fill up a page. And then you get everybody back together and you have everyone read their answers. And it's kind of like playing the game Scattergories. that when two people have the same answer, one of them has to cross it off. Okay, so we don't want all of these duplicates. And then, now you may end up with 50 things. Once you get everyone's answers, you may have 50 possible answers. Now, the key is, now on this planner page, I give you 16, 8 on either side. And what you do when you go back to the whiteboard, when you go to this planner, you write, and it's just random order. Number 1 goes at the top of the page. Number 2 goes at the bottom. Number 3 goes right underneath number 1. Number 4 goes above number 2. Number 5 goes under 3. Number 6 goes above number 4. You're alternating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, till you get all of the answers in one column. So you'll see, and you'll see when you open up this PDF that there's 1 through 8 on one side, there's 9 through 16 on the other side. Now, once the answers are written down, this is where it gets fun. The first 2 answers fight to the death. So it could be, okay, what are 3 things we can do in the next 90 days? I'm just going to make up some dumb stuff here. Hey, we could start serving coffee at our service. And another one could be, we could hire a children's pastor part-time, $50 a week, whatever. So after you've alternated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you go, 1 versus 49. Okay. In this case, it would be like 1 versus 16. And they duke it out to the death. The two things that we're fighting are coffee versus hire a children's pastor part-time. And so everyone goes around the room. So what do we think would actually make our church better or bigger in the next 90 days if we had to pick between one of these 2 things? Start serving coffee or hire a children's pastor. And everybody around the room says, well, that's a no-brainer. We need a children's pastor. Okay. So then what we do, we cross off number 1 and we put hire children's pastor goes to the next round. If you've ever seen like a March Madness bracket, this is exactly what we're doing here. Okay? So you go through all 50 answers, or in this case, all 16. I just asked for the top 16. By the way, just a quick side note, this PDF, this is actually a personal, all you got to do is follow the directions. You can do this for yourself. This isn't just for your staff. You start here. Hey, choose an area in your life that needs the most improvement, that needs planning. And then I list the 7 main areas, and then I give an other, because you could plan a party with this thing. It doesn't just have to be personal. You can plan a ministry event with this thing. And so you circle, hey, my family needs the most help right now. And then the next thing, it says on the back side of this sheet, write down every possible answer to make your family better in the next 90 days. And then you pick your top 16 answers and they duke it out to the death, and then you get your top idea, and then you write down your 90-day goal, and then there's even a resources list here. Who can I recruit to help me with this? So you can use this for yourself, Pastor. Hey, I need to lose 50 pounds. I've lost 60 pounds in a year with this planner. Okay? So you can, that's why this is brilliant. And I'm actually going to sell this for a lot of money at the end of this year. But I'm giving this to you, okay? Because you've invested in yourself by taking this academy course, I want to actually resource you to make sure you have the tools you need to take your church to the next level. So you can use this for you can use this for your family, you can use this for your church, doesn't matter. You can print out as many copies as you want, just don't sell it because it's copyrighted. Okay, so here we go. So you go through all of the ideas that your owners, the people on your team, come up with to answer the question, what 3 things could we do in the next 90 days that would make our church better or bigger? And then you circle 1, 2, 3. Here's our 3 ideas. Guess what? The only thing you and your team are going to talk about at every meeting for the next 90 days. Those 3 things. In fact, before you leave the room that day, you assign to someone other than yourself. Okay? You assign responsibility. Who is going to be the gold medal champion for this cause for the next 3 months? Now, they're not going to do it by themselves. I mean, everyone around the table is going to help them. The other coaches are going to help them. The players are going to help them. Those 3 ideas become the banner under which your church operates for the next 3 months. As a part of your, remember, you've got to drip vision into every sermon. You can get up in front of your church and say, hey, church, I just want to let you know that last week the elders of our church, or the deacons of our church, or our pastoral team, or our senior leadership team, whatever you call it, hey, I just want to let you know we got together and we prayed and we asked God, what does he want us to do for the next few months? What does he want us to focus on? I just want you to know that we're going to focus on kids, and we're going to focus on improving the quality of our Sunday service, and we're going to focus on the pregnancy care center down the street, whatever your 3 things are. Dude, those are the things that you're talking about every Sunday and every meeting. When you meet with your leaders, the only thing you're talking about, how are you doing with your responsibility? How are you doing with your win? How are you doing with your goal for the next 90 days? How are you doing? How are you doing? How can I help you? Those are your 2 questions. How are you doing? How can I help you? Okay? So those are your owners. You get your owners in the room. This is how you get the field ready for your owners. Now, next step is your coaches. How do you get your field ready for the coaches? Well, you have to make sure that once the owners have defined the win, that how many ever coaches you have on your team have responsibility for the core functions of your church. So someone needs to be responsible for Sunday. Someone needs to be responsible for children. Someone needs to be responsible for the first impressions in your church. Ushers, greeters, hospitality. And your coaches are the ones that have responsibility for those areas. Again, you are not the star player. You are coaching the star players. You are coaching the coaches who coach the star players. And so you meet with them and you talk about your 90-day objectives. That's what you do. Then you have your players. How do you get the field ready for your players? Well, the way that you get the field ready for your players is you have to make it as easy as possible for them to serve. When someone fills out a connection card or a communication card, which, by the way, let me just say, in the Resource Center, you will find job descriptions for your worship leader, for your children's person, for your student person, for all of that. And I'm giving that all to you. Just take our name off of it, put your name on it. So you'll have job descriptions for your coaches. I'm putting our connection card and our follow-up system in the Resource Center. and you can just take everything that we use and use it for your church. So once you get a connection card, you need to make contact with that person within 48 hours. Here's why. There's 168 hours in a week. You only get your church for one of those hours, and then life takes over. Now, I preach 3 services a Sunday, and I'm so tired by Sunday night, I don't even remember if I went to church. So when you get a person in your congregation to come to your church, and you preach the word of God to them, and we know that faith comes by the hearing of the word. So you're preaching, and their faith gets all stirred up, and they say, I want to commit my life to Christ, or I want to join the church, or I want to serve in ministry. If you do not make contact by Tuesday, they don't even remember if they've been to church recently, because they went to work on Monday and their boss yelled at them for being late. And they were late picking up their kids from daycare, which daycare charges $60 a minute if you're late. And they got into a fight with their spouse. If you don't call them until Thursday or Friday, or heaven forbid, 3 weeks later, they don't remember signing up to be an usher. They don't remember signing up to serve in your children's ministry. You've got to make contact within no later than 48 hours. The sooner, the better. So we ask our ministry leaders to set aside 1 hour a week to do what we call 3-2-1. The 3-2-1 method is with the people on their team and or with the connection cards that have come in. We ask them to write 3 handwritten notes, make 2 phone calls, and have 1 face-to-face meeting. Simple as that. New volunteers always get a phone call outside of the 3-2-1. And we ask them to do something. Mostly we just ask them to show up the next week so they can try the ministry that they signed up for. So that's how you get the field ready for your players. How do you get your field ready for your spectators? You always put the next step in front of them. So we say at our church that we know people will go to a friendly church, but they'll only stay if they make a friend. Think about it. People will go to a friendly church, but they only stay if they make a friend. This is why you get guests in your church, but they don't stick because they didn't get connected. So you've got to make it as simple as possible for your spectators to get connected. People will go to a friendly church. Oh, they said hi to me when I walked in. Oh, the pastor and his wife are so nice, or the pastor's funny, he preaches the word of God, but he's humorous, he makes it easy to understand. Oh, I really like that church. Or if someone asks them, hey, do you go to church? Oh yeah, I go to that church. Now, they may not stick, but they'll tell people they go to that church. So how do you get spectators to stick? People will go to a friendly church, but they'll only stay if they make a friend. And we say at our church, there's only 2 ways to make friends. Get involved in a serving opportunity or join a growth group. That's it. Get plugged in to a growth group, find a ministry to serve in. Now, I'm going to give you concrete steps on how to get people plugged into both of those in a later module of the academy. Just know that for spectators, you have to make it as easy as possible for them to get connected. So with that, I'm going to give you in the Resource Center our follow-up system, our connection card, and the job descriptions for the coaches that will be coaching your players, the people that are actually doing the ministry. Let me just say real quick, when it comes to spectators, our follow-up system is very simple. When they show up to church and they fill out a connection card, or they register their children for the children's ministry, or they write a check and put it in the offering. Any of those three. Any of those three triggers. Week 1, they get a handwritten note from me. Thank you so much for coming to Riverview Church. I hope you enjoy the service, and I hope that I get to see you again soon. Blessings, Pastor Todd. That's all it says. That's it. Week 1, they get a handwritten note. The second week, whether or not they came back the next week, the second week, they get a phone call from someone on the team. Hey, thank you for coming to Riverview. I noticed that you showed up a couple weeks ago. I just wanted to see if you had any questions or if there was something that we could pray about for you. Phone calls, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. They're not long. The third week, whether or not they have come back, we don't do anything because there's a fine line between follow-up and stalking them, and we don't want people to feel stalked. But on the fourth week, we send them a form letter. Again, whether or not they come back. Now, most people come back because we've sent them a note and we've called them. Now, the fourth week, we send them the form letter, which simply tells them what their next step is. Join a growth group, get involved in a ministry. Because we know that you'll go to a friendly church, but you only stay if you make a friend. So again, that follow-up system will be in the Resource Center. So you've got your owners, you've got your coaches, you've got your players, you've got your spectators, and you've gotten the field ready for all of them. The last group that you need to get the field ready for is your city. Now, you're going through this whole process of defining the win, appointing other assistant coaches. You're making it easier for your players to play. You're seeing the Sunday experience through the eyes of your spectators, just to get to the place where you can begin to invite your city. So the first thing that you need not to do when you're trying to grow your church from 0 to 200, the last thing that you should do is go and plan a big event. You've got to get the field ready first. You've got to know who's on your team, and you've got to get the field ready. Once you have done that, once you've defined the win, the 3 objectives over the next 90 days with your owners, once you've appointed those assistant coaches over the core functions in your church, once you have made it easy for your players to play and your spectators to get connected, that's when you start inviting your city. And so once you've done all of that, you know the field is ready, we can go on to the next module, which is how to pick the right offense and defense for your team. So that is it for the first module of the Church Playbook Academy. Thank you for watching, and I'm excited to jump into the next module with you. Now, at this point, for those of you that have been watching live, let me go through the comments and answer any questions that you may have. And again, remember, for those of you that are not watching live, you're watching the playback of this, you can still put your questions in the comments section. and I will answer that. You might scroll through the thread to see if your question has already been asked and answered. Let's go through here. Thomas. Thomas says, love it. Yes. Christopher, Cedric, thanks for hanging out. Anthony, thanks for joining. Thomas said, ouch. What are you saying ouch for? Cedric says, I'm adding that to the mission statement. Would love to know what mission statement you currently have and what you're adding to it. Thomas says, owners define the win. That's absolutely right. Bigger or better in 90 days. And that's key, not 6 months, not a year, not 3 years, not 5 years. 90 days. Name 3 things. Yes. And yes, what can we do? Here's the thing. And gosh, this isn't going to be in the video that everyone else sees, but you guys will get this. Listen, leadership is the art of the possible, not the hopeful. If you were a general in the Army, you know that taking the high ground is essential to victory. So if there are 3 hills and you know that you want to take the high ground, the elevation on all 3 of them, but if you only have enough men to take 2 of the 3 hills, you have a decision to make. Do I try and spread my men out over the 3 hills, or do I take the 2 that I know I can take? And the mistake that a lot of us make is we know we need to take the 3 hills, and so we'll spread our very limited resources over those 3 hills, and then we end up losing all of them because no one squad, no one platoon has enough resources to take each of those hills. Instead of just dividing our resources and taking the 2 that we know. Leadership is the art of the possible, not the hopeful. So what you do is you begrudgingly take the 2 hills that you know you can take and know that the Lord will eventually send you reinforcements to take the 3rd hill. That's why the question, what can we do in the next 90 days to make our church better or bigger? That's why it's a brilliant question, because what can we do? Not what would we like to do, not what do we hope we can do. It's what can we actually do? That's why it's a brilliant question. And here's the thing, leader, if you want to gain the next level of the hearts and the minds of your people, you need to start stacking small successes on top of one another. We're not just going for the big win. Okay, we're going for a lot of small wins that stack on top of each other that not only become a big win, but eventually give you the resources so that you can go after the big win. Gregory, thanks for hanging out today. Appreciate you, man. Thomas says, good stuff. I'll watch the replay. You have to work tonight. Gotta love those bivocational pastors, baby. Doing the double shift, praying for you. So, again, ask whatever questions you have. Put them in the comment thread. I've been on here an hour. This will be the longest one. The other ones will be shorter, probably except for the last one when we talk about the nuts and bolts of Facebook marketing. That'll probably be a little bit longer too. I imagine that all the other videos will probably be about 20 minutes. But that's it. Listen, I love you guys. I so appreciate what you're doing. We need you. The kingdom needs you. God bless you. I hope this inspires and encourages you. I am here for you, and I am cheering you on. God bless you guys. We'll talk to you soon.